Hello, welcome to Writing Off the Deep End,
Hi, I'm Mary Thaler,
and I'm Geoffrey Edwards.
and you'll notice we're not in the same room anymore because, like most responsible people in our city who don't have to go outside, we are staying safe inside our own apartments.
Right, so this is our Zoom episode
Yeah.
for Writing Off the Deep End. And in sync with the context,
hmm
we're going to talk about the coronavirus epidemic.
Yeah. We're not going to talk about the numbers or the politics, but we're going to focus in on how it's affecting our writing life.
Right. And one of the things I wanted to say about that to begin with was that both of us are in the rather enviable position of being essentially full-time writers. So you would think, since we were already at home working on our writing, that maybe it didn't change a lot, but of course it did. So that's
Yeah.
part of what we wanted to talk about, right?
So let's start with that. To give you context, we're filming this on the 6th of April. So we've now been in lockdown for about 3 weeks. How have you noticed your writing routines and habits changed?
Well, it's not just my writing routines, obviously. There's a level of anxiety that is largely debilitating in some sense. It makes it difficult to concentrate. I'm not sleeping well, so I'm struggling with a variety of emotional and physical issues during the day that make it hard to focus on the writing the way I was used to doing it beforehand. I haven't found the writing to be that easy. I have done some work, but it's not been easy. What
Yeah.
about yourself?
Well, I think, as you say, I was in a good position at the start. You know how the World Health Organization talks about the importance of maintaining our routines. Well, one of the routines that I clung to was that I get up in the morning and I write, and so kept doing that. I admit I'm often distracted. I check the news and Twitter far more often than I should, but writing has been actually one of the normal things, one of the few things that hasn't changed for me during the pandemic.
And
And so
is
I feel lucky to have that.
and has it changed how you write?
I think that the processes have been the same. I'm still sitting at my desk, I'm still writing by hand and typing onto the computer and spending about the same amount of time doing it, except that I don't have errands and other distractions. But it has changed the way I've thought about some of the stories that I'm trying to tell. Some plots that just seemed perfectly normal to be writing a couple of months ago now just have an eerie, they're overcast by the current events. And I'm not referencing the pandemic in my writing in any explicit way, but it changed the way I'm thinking about the world generally. I'm thinking about a lot of things differently. And I think that is being reflected in what I'm
So
writing.
how, when you say it changes your thinking about the world, so how would that affect? Can you just give a little bit more detail about that?
Sure. So, I'm writing this historical novel in which characters on a ship get scurvy. And to a greater extent than I was before, I'm really interested in how the leadership aboard the ship is dealing with a health crisis on board their vessel. It is suddenly all kinds of aspects of that seem much more significant. What about you? Has it changed anything about your methods or about your thoughts about writing?
Yeah, so I've been dipping into different things because I have this problem with the concentration.
Mm-hmm.
So I have several works in progress that allows me to switch from one to another and make progress in each one, but
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily a lot in each one. So I've been focusing in on stories that I find are emotionally in rhythm with the way I feel. Stories where people are a bit lost or a bit uncertain about what the future holds. And that allows me to work with those issues in the story, as it were. I also have like you, I had a story that involves a virus. And that story is overcast, as you mentioned, that gives it a different kind of viscerality to the story than it had before.
Neither of us is writing about it explicitly. I felt no desire to suddenly sit down and start writing a story about the pandemic itself. And I think there's a sense in which we're not at the end of that story yet. So I'm not ready to write about it.
No, I agree. It's too fresh still. It needs
Mm-hmm.
to be digested before I would be ready to. I think maybe there are people who are already writing about it, but I find that difficult. I sort of need to sit with a topic. Most of my books have taken at least 2 years of gestation before I sat down to actually start to write them. So I need this gestation period before I'm ready to do it. But I imagine it will show up.
We're living through something that we're going to be remembering and thinking back to all our lives. And so it's going to, in one way or another, it's going to cast its shadow.
Another thing is that I felt from the beginnings of the pandemic that poetry has a more important role to play in what's going on. It kind of lifts our spirit in a way with these sort
Mm-hmm.
of smaller pieces that work with us rather than the longer stories. And I say that, and I'm reading more poetry, but I'm finding it hard to write poetry, even though I think it's important.
I sat down to write a poem today. I've been doing a poetry challenge with a friend of mine where we have a list of prompts and we're working through them together. It was our challenge for the pandemic. So I was having a hard time getting a poem out today, and it might be the concentration issues that we've been talking about. But I think you're quite right that when things do start to flow, it may be poetry that will come first, because poetry has this gift for capturing transitory state, the most elusive things. It's often poetry that we can use to capture them. So I think perhaps when we are ready to write about coronavirus, the first thing that will come will be poetry.
So those are a few thoughts that we have about the pandemic and
Yeah,
its
if
effects on us.
for those of our listeners who are writers, I hope you're able to write what you want to write, or that you're just storing up those beautiful words and images for a more relaxed time.
I think next time we go back to our regular programming,
I believe we're talking about age.
yeah, that's right. So ages in the life and the different phases that we go through. So if you like what you're listening to, don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye bye.